All right, guys, welcome back to Reviewers Assemble. My name is Kyle. As always, I'm your host. Thank you for joining us. I know it's been some time. Life gets in the way, as we see from example A. We had some things that came up, so it's been a couple weeks since we put Cap up there, but thank you for joining us again. As always, I'm Kyle, joined by Victor. As usual, we have a special guest today, Nigel.
What's up,
Our buddy
Nige?
Nigel. Garrett couldn't make it this week, but we have a fill-in for Nigel, so Garrett will be missed, but we'll kind of, the show goes on, as Leo DiCaprio says in Wolf of Wall Street.
A little understudy right over here. So
Yeah, exactly. But Nigel's a big fan of the MCU, so I think he'll fit in just nicely. But yeah, today we are reviewing The Avengers, the first Avengers movie, which came out in 2012, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just similar format to last week, or I should say last show's format. We're going to do best scenes, we're going to do worst scenes, strongest Avenger, which will be our favorite actor or actress, and Baby Arms, which will be our weakest, and overall score rankings. So yeah, just off the bat, what did you guys think of your favorite scenes for The Avengers?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about the Avengers overall, it's the first time you tie everybody together. We obviously have talked about this in the past. You bring in Mark Ruffalo as the Incredible Hulk, which is obviously a huge upgrade. They're really developing, Scarlett Jo's character and Jeremy Renner's character with with Hawkeye and wow, I'm really struggling.
Natasha Romanoff?
Yeah, and Natasha. So they're really developing them in this specific movie, and this is when Samuel L. tries to tie them all together and actually create the Avenger Initiative. So if you haven't seen all the previous movies, obviously you need to go watch them. This one really just ties it all together, and this is like the full-blown propeller pouring the gasoline on the fire to really launch these movies. I think if you weren't into the previous movies before this came out, this hooked you in. It hooked me in. So I remember going to see this with I believe an old friend of ours, won't mention names, and he's the one who got me into this through the first Avengers movie. So that's what kind of launched me into it, and then I went backwards and watched them all, and I feel like there's a lot of people out there that probably did the same. Because if you're not into superheroes, you see Iron Man, you're like, yeah, whatever. Captain America, yeah, whatever. And then they're like, holy shit, all of these guys in one movie, I gotta see this.
I think it did pretty well at the box office.
Oh, of course, it crushed it. So then it stuck you into it. So obviously a great movie, a lot of action, a lot of emotions too, from all of the characters in different ways, between, them getting angry with each other a little bit, some emotions between, different people possibly dying and things like that. So, great overall movie. We want to give our first kind of preview to our special guest, Nigel. Nigel, what was your favorite scene overall?
I mean, so it's kind of tied up there, Vic. I like a lot of the favorite scenes are definitely the ones that are all the intros for each of the characters, kind of where they bring them into that, because you see in all of the other movies, the individual movies and stuff like that, at the end of each one, those little cutaway scenes, where or the end credit scenes, whatever you want to call it, where you get to kind of see their initial, bringing them into the movies and stuff like that. We're gonna go find the, Mjolnir in the desert and stuff like that. And all that stuff that build up the anticipation, but then you actually get to go see, Nick Fury go out there and kind of Romanoff go ahead and go get them and bring them in and stuff like that. So I mean, if I'm gonna pick one of them, my favorite's got to be when Natasha goes and gets Banner.
So good,
right in the beginning.
So good, man.
Whatever country he was in, I don't think they tell us where it was, but you're right.
I don't think they say it, which I thought was surprising. I thought it was Brazil or something.
Well, I want to say that, but I think it's supposed to be in the Incredible Hulk, whichever one he goes out to, because they kind of show that at the end of it, but I can't remember which country it's in.
I don't know if
they.
But
in the Incredible Hulk, he starts off in Brazil,
right,
and then he bugs out, and he ends up in Panama or something like that.
So I can't. I don't know if it's they're trying to show that he's moving around or whatever.
It also kind of looks like the Middle East, so it's hard to say. But you're right. I mean, that scene's awesome because the little girl tricks him into running to the little cottage or whatever because their dad's sick, and then she jumps out the window, which is so funny because your first time seeing, you're like, what the hell just happened? Why did she jump out the window? And then remember when he gets angry?
Yep.
And Natasha pulls a gun from a
Oh, it's
a
great.
thing.
Where he like fakes her out. She's
Yeah.
like and like freaks out.
And then
about
she
it.
goes,
And she says, stand down.
stand down.
Yeah.
He's like, I thought we were alone.
There's like 30 agents around the building.
It's great because it's quick too. Because like that's pretty early on and everything, and it's like
Yeah.
right there that
Yeah.
it's that sass factor that in my opinion is one of the best parts of this entire movie and the MCU personally is just just those little moments of kind of slight comedy, where she's like, it's kind of a big scene where she's actually really worried about. She knows what this guy could become.
Yeah.
She
if
says
she
it's
doesn't
been
know.
over like 100 days, I think, since the incident.
And then like right away, it's just like stand down. It's like, oh, okay, she was actually prepared. It's a little funny,
You're right. I mean, that whole recruitment at the beginning is really cool, and it kind of shows. Like, obviously, we know that like Cap and Iron Man are kind of the leaders throughout the whole thing. Leading the team.
Yep.
From the natural like leadership of Cap, and then Iron Man. Tony just being the genius guy and the billionaire and whatever. But Natasha has a really strong role as a leader because she's such a trusted soldier and spy.
For sure.
Like she grew up in that game where these guys are like manufactured soldiers. Obviously Cap was a soldier, but it was a short period of time before he disappeared for 70 years or whatever it was. So that specific scene that you were talking about is it like when Samuel L. or Nick Fury calls and says, I want you to get the big guy, and she's like, yeah, Tony doesn't really trust me. He's like, no,
yeah,
the other guy.
I thought that was weird that she would. She thought he was talking about Tony initially. And I was like, the big guy. Like,
Well, she had never met him, so it was like her first
true.
time.
I think it also shows a little bit of reluctance on her part, where like and also going back to the whole part where like he kind of fakes getting angry, and she's like, she really doesn't necessarily want to be in that situation.
No, it's just read a report. That was it.
And she realizes that I think it's kind of one of the moments that kind of humanizes her, which I really like throughout the entire series and everything like that, especially in this movie where it's like, she is not a superhero. She doesn't have superpowers. She doesn't have a high-tech gear or anything like that. She is a flawless agent.
Yeah, she's just a soldier.
Yeah,
really.
that's what she is. And so she realizes that if this guy gets mad, like, this is it. And she never really would have thought that, Nick Fury really wants me to go get the Hulk. Really? This is who you want me to go get? And he trusts you.
She's trusted, though.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cool moment in that. So I like that because it shows all kinds of backstory between, like, 3 different characters all at once.
Yeah, it ties them all in.
Yeah. For me, like, one of my favorite scenes is, I think the first scene that I really liked was when the forest scene where it's Thor and Iron Man. I think
and Loki's watching up top.
Cap jumps out and she's like, "Oh, maybe sit this one out." And Cap's like, "Nah." What does he say? He's like,
"Not my nature, man," or something like that.
But that I thought was weird though, because he doesn't have. I think he takes like a parachute, but he tries to like fly with the shield, which I thought was weird. I was like, look, Thor and Iron Man can obviously fly. Cap, I was like, I don't know. That seemed like a little bit of a stretch for me, where I was like, Cap shouldn't really be able to like fly or control where he's going, but. That whole scene I think was awesome where like Thor like lights his hammer up and he charges it at Tony, or he throws it at Tony, and then Tony like takes a hit and he's like, oh, 400% power, and he's like, how about that?
Yeah.
That's a curse.
Yeah.
Like he thinks he's damaging when he's like, oh, you actually just superpowered my suit. But that whole forest scene I thought was really good with like when Thor just jumps into the helicarrier or like and takes Loki and then like leaves like, and I was like, oh,
like it's nothing.
Thor, and like he calls the thunder down, and Thor's entrance I thought was cool. That whole sequence I thought was really cool. Like one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you, Vic?
So I kind of have 2, and they're 2 different ones. So the more exciting one is I love when all of them are united at the end in the war scene. They're in the circle, Hulk's yelling at them, and they're ready to go.
It's an iconic shot, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's so iconic. So it's not like a favorite scene necessarily. It's just a great moment where like you see the true powers of all of them that are in that specific scene. I think that's amazing. One of the more emotional scenes for me and favorite scenes is when Coulson dies.
Okay.
And Nick Fury uses the baseball trading cards or whatever from Captain America as a motivation, and we find out that it's a fraud. Yeah. But you see Cap and Tony, who we know, especially going in the future, are the leaders, and they don't always get along, and we know that, looking forward. But the emotions on those 2 faces, in them, like finally them clicking and saying, like, Pepper's friend Coulson just died, and my biggest fan Coulson just died, and the 2 of them, it clicks to them, like they need to put their egos aside, and they need to work together, and that's what kind of pulls it together. And it's funny because Coulson says it to Fury, and he doesn't finish the sentence before he dies, and he says like, we knew this wouldn't work unless they had something to motivate them or something like that, or to unite them. He meant to say something like that. And I just love the emotions behind that pull them together. So two different scenes, I guess one's more of like a quick snap, but that, like, the emotions in that really kind of hit me a little bit, especially seeing all of them already. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
For sure.
what about like your least favorite scenes?
So I'll get a lot of flack for this one, but honestly, I don't care for the helicarrier scene. I'll be honest, the fight scene in it, and
where Hawkeye hits them.
Yeah, when Hawkeye comes back,
That's like the middle of the movie, I think.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not a huge fan. And don't get me wrong, at the beginning of it, and the build up to it, there's a lot of kind of funny scenes, stuff like that are really enjoyable. But I really don't like and I know the whole point is to kind of like tear the team apart, and that's the whole point of it. But
it was way too easy to access the ship.
That's my point.
And that's what pissed me off. And I actually, I got a little cheesy with it, but I rewinded it, and they did have a ship, like they commandeered a ship that was supposed to be there, and they used clearance to get it, but it just seemed way too easy.
Too convenient.
For something like S.H.I.E.L.D., it seemed way
how
too
insanely secure that ship is, the helicarrier.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. That thing pissed me off too, and how quick and easy it was. What was it? One little bomb blew that whole propeller out, and out of the four propellers, one arrow, and out of the four propellers, one goes down, and that whole thing's in a sink now.
Exactly. Like there's nothing else other than those propellers. Like,
way too vulnerable.
No backup, nothing. Yeah,
you're right.
Exactly. Like, and the fact that, and you know, we'll get kind of back to this when we go a little further into that whole list that we have. But like, the fact that Nick Fury doesn't seem quite ready for this. Like, you're getting these people together. Like,
you're the general.
Yeah, there's this whole thing of like that cell that they put Loki in. Who's this actually for?
Yeah.
You know, who's actually supposed to be in the cell? You have that in place, but like, what if you don't get him into the cell and they don't have? And clearly, they don't really have a plan if he.
Yeah, once they put Loki in there, what were they gonna do with the whole?
Right, exactly. So it's just like, it felt very like, okay, yes, the team wasn't prepared, but.
The general.
Neither was the entirety of S.H.I.E.L.D. apparently.
To your point, Nigel, if you guys remember, Tony has a line in the movie where he says, like, he's Nick Fury, he's like, he's the spy of all spies, he's like, his secrets have secrets. So it's like, you'd think he would be prepared.
Exactly.
Like, you'd think he's like top tier, like we think of S.H.I.E.L.D. and they're like impenetrable.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with both points that you guys made, where it's like, they got in way too easy, I thought. And like, Hawkeye, to me, like, going on kind of worse scenes, like, I didn't really like the fact that Loki just like took control, where he just like points the scepter at people's hearts.
Yeah.
And then there is a good scene later on where he tries on Tony and he just hits him, and he's just like, yeah, this usually works. And
it's in the like,
because it's not like yard reactor. Yeah.
1 out of 5, man. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Exactly. But I just thought
it's like the flu shot.
Yeah, I thought it was for me.
Let's go to a different angle. But.
Yeah. Don't get me going.
The flu shot. Yeah. This is supposed to be an escape, okay? So but to me, I don't know. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was pretty much
Yeah, for me, like, worst scenes, I think, like, I hated the opening with Loki. Like, I thought it should have been such a cool setup, but him, like, just coming in through the Tesseract, like, I just thought that was so weird. For me, I love Tom Hiddleston. Like, I love Loki.
Yeah, absolutely.
For an Avengers movie, though, I don't think he lives up to, like, the level villain that they need for an Avengers movie. Like, in a Thor movie, 100%. Like Thor Dark World that's coming up, like, or any of the Thors, I think Loki's a great villain. I think Loki in an Avengers movie, though, I just don't think, I mean, obviously they can't have a Thanos level bad guy in the sixth movie. They're going to build to that. But, like, I just thought I don't think the stakes were high enough for me. Like, watching this movie, I was like, you know, he's got this army that is like the Chitauri army or something like that.
What pissed me off, since you're on that point, is in Thor, which we just watched and reviewed, he falls off the Bifrost, falls into space. They think he's dead, and then next thing you know, he's just back. He just shows up on Earth.
He shows up like through the Tesseract.
Yeah, and he's got like the Chitauri or whatever army behind him. So I wish they closed that gap a little bit and kind of explain to us how that happened. And Loki's supposed to have a movie, isn't he?
He will, yeah.
He's gonna have I know he's gonna have a TV series.
Is it a series?
I think on Disney Plus.
Okay.
So I would love to know, and I don't really care, but that's a big gap to close. Like, you reverse, and we know that, you know, that's kind of a small gap because Fury and Coulson keep referring to when Thor and the big metal steel guy, I forget what it's called, show up on Earth, and they're like, we need to prepare for things outside of this world now. So it's clearly a close gap.
It's bigger than just Earth.
Yeah. So
okay. And so to that exact point, like kind of what you guys were saying right there, that's probably the other part that kind of annoys me with the whole helicarrier and your opening scene where they're starting, like they say right there with Thor, that like we need to prepare for this off-world stuff. So you have some idea of what's about to happen, and it just seems like in the first scene right there, and like because you see how Thor left, and you see how he came in and stuff like. Obviously, they didn't see him at first, but like you know that they can just come to this planet whenever they feel like, you know. Yeah. And it's like they have no answers for it.
No difference.
I know that's kind of the point,
but
at the same time, it's just a little. Again, gets back to that whole. Seems a little too easy. It's kind of like you guys didn't have.
Yeah, they're like, oh, the Tesseract is acting up, but not on this end. And he's like, what do you mean not on this end? And he's like, oh, that means someone else is messing with it. And it's like, okay, so they, like you said, Nigel, they still don't have like answers to that.
Exactly.
They're just like, oh, someone is messing with it, and we find out it's Loki.
Yeah.
But it's never explained how he gets to Earth. He just, you know, like you said, he falls off the bridge, and then next time we see him, he's on Earth, and it's like, how did you go to other planets? Where did you? Yeah. That I agree. That's kind of like a plot hole or a gap that I would like them to fill.
I think that there's this whole thing of him. So like Thanos was the one that picked him up when he fell off the Bifrost. They don't really explain it in this one significantly.
They say in the future that Thanos is the one that sent Loki.
Yeah. So
Thanos told the Chitauri to attack Earth.
Yeah.
But
he like lent him the army.
Yeah. So the Chitauri named Loki the leader of the army to go attack Earth for whatever reason. But
it's like, why was he chosen?
Yeah, and close that gap.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Loki wants vengeance on his brother and vengeance on the people that Thor likes and protects. I get that, but close that gap. You know, that's a definitely, and what I think is a great movie, and we'll rank it later. You gotta close that gap.
Yeah, it's interesting because even Loki says in the movie, he's like, I was a king, and it's like it's kind of weird. That's like, now that you say that, like it's a weird gap now that I'm thinking of, like, what happened between when we saw him in Thor and when we saw him in Avengers, which he just shows up. But
I would have liked a different opening scene for sure. Where it's a little more Loki based right at the beginning of the movie, maybe, you know, instead.
And he deserves it. I mean, the acting's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, and
he's great. I just don't know if he lives. Like I said, I don't know if he's like worthy of an Avengers worthy threat, or like I don't know who they would have used.
He wasn't without the Chitauri.
But even then, it's like, who is this army? I feel like they kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, he's very smart. I mean, that's the one thing we can't underestimate about him. He's smart, he's tricky, he's sneaky. I mean, look at what he did at Thor.
Thor goes into the capsule, whatever.
And he kills Coulson pretty quickly. I mean, he's a sneaky little
bastard. He's definitely a threat for sure. I mean, he's a god.
So I get what you're saying, but with the Chitauri behind him, he has the scepter and the Tesseract. I mean, he has some advantages. Yeah. So I get what you're saying about him individually, but he has some support. So I mean, for me, and I'm not gonna say it's the worst visual scene, but we talked about it, and it kind of hit me when we were watching it. The worst logistical scene for me is the fight scene at the end. I don't understand, after all the humans were cleared and everyone was off the streets, why they were just trying to fight the Chitauri on the streets when the biggest issue was closing it. Like, there was a 5, 7, 10 minute gap when they're just, you know, kicking ass and getting their asses kicked.
They're going to keep coming, though.
Exactly. There's millions of them, you know, hypothetically. So it just pissed me off that they kind of got off focus. The fact they knew they needed to close that, that should have been their only focus. They should have all been on top of Stark Tower, trying to take that thing down, and then fight them off of Stark Tower. Or, I don't know. But that just, logistically, that pissed me off. Obviously, the fight scenes are great. I mean, Hulk punching the thing in the face when he says, "That's just it, Cap. I'm always angry."
Angry, yeah.
And he punches it and takes it down. Like, you'll always remember those scenes. Right. And, you know, when the Hulk smashes Loki, fucking bouncing him back and forth, things like that. Scarlet Jo getting shot up.
Puny God.
Yeah, puny God. Like, all of those scenes you'll always, always, always remember. But logistically, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah. So I'll say maybe just from a writing perspective, maybe it was only to create like that disconnect and that disarray in their heads, you know, because they're
a new team.
Yeah, so maybe that's the only reason. But I agree, it is weird because it's like, especially for Cap, like he gets them kind of together, but it's like you gotta you have a genius in Tony Stark. You have an agent. You have two agents now. You got Hawkeye and Romanoff at this point, who are like they're used to this kind of stuff. You have the super soldier. Like they all know what to do, and they don't attack that.
And you're right. And part of my favorite scene when they circle up together and they strategize again. I mean,
you would think that at that point and that's supposed to be their coming together scene. So from a writing perspective, maybe they're trying to be like, well, they're not perfect yet, but at the same time, you got 4 people that should be able to figure out, hey, we should probably get up there, but really only 2 of them do.
Yeah.
So
that's a fair point.
It is weird that they don't get up there and like they're not all like, yeah, we should definitely go and take that thing out first.
Yeah, Natasha eventually figures it out, but she has to get the scepter first.
Yeah.
But you think they would all be focused on Loki to be like, we need to get the scepter to close the portal.
That is the other weird thing is they don't go after Loki.
Just Tony.
Yeah.
Which is a great scene, and Hulk apparently, but like Tony's going up there and he's all casual. And
that's actually a great cocky Tony Stark scene.
That is another great scene.
When he takes that one off, he gets thrown off Stark Towers, and he's like calling for the new whatever it's called, like the Mod 40.
Yeah, and Jarvis is like, it's a prototype, and he's like, whatever, he's like, send it or whatever.
Yeah, he goes, skip all the bells and whistles.
So yeah, strongest Avenger, which is again, for those who don't know, our favorite actor or actress. Doesn't necessarily need to be an Avenger, just the title we have for it. So Nigel, you're the guest here. What would you think? Who did you think was your favorite person in this movie?
I had a tough one with this one because like I always love Iron Man and everything like that, but I'm gonna say that although he's fantastic and he does kind of cause a lot of problems with the ego, which is that's Tony Stark. So I'm gonna say that honestly, I know I gave him a lot of flack here at the beginning, but Nick Fury is probably my strongest guy, just because like you got a lot going on, and he constantly is talking to these higher ups and everything.
The council,
just being like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm bringing my guys in, and he stands by them the whole time and everything. And it's not flawless because it's a first time, and I mean literally, like he has no.
He's growing into the role.
Exactly. He's got nothing to go off of, But so I'll say, I think he's probably my strongest guy. But Samuel L. Jackson, come on, like it's just fun to watch him.
No, you're right. He shows a bunch of different sides between motivating the team,
everything,
and dealing with the council, showing his own frustrations. He has some fight scenes. He has that bad one with the pistol trying to shoot down the plane. But,
that's the only part where I'm like,
after the RPG though, where he does take down the decoy plane.
He does
real quick, one shot. So no, you're right. He shows a lot of different sides of him throughout this movie. That's a fair.
I like the adaptability of him throughout the whole thing.
So.
Yeah, absolutely
shows his range as an actor, really. Samuel. For me, like, my strongest Avenger is by far Tony Stark in this movie. This movie, I felt like we're doing Iron Man 3 next. I felt like this was more of an Iron Man movie than it was an Avengers movie. But like, I was so excited. We're gonna get to my score in a little bit there. I was a little disappointed by this movie rewatching it. I was really excited to see the whole team like kind of team up, and like they got the group together. Just kind of really quick jumping back to kind of a worst scene section. I didn't like the fact where they're all arguing with each other because I thought that was way kind of what we were saying.
Well, he does have that one quote. That's a great quote. We've already used it before.
Which one is that?
When him and Cap are arguing, and Cap goes, "What are you without the suit?"
Oh, that's a good scene though, where he's like that part of like where he's like put on the suit, and then like there's like an explosion, and he goes, "Put on the suit." He's like, "Yeah, I'm going."
Yeah.
Quick question though for you guys: why? This is something I noticed on the rewatch. Why does Cap hate Tony Stark? He like hates him right from the get go. Is it because he worked with his dad, Howard?
No, I honestly think they both kind of hate each other, and I think it's just two different philosophical guys. I mean, Tony is your cocky billionaire philanthropist, blah blah blah, like he says he is, where Cap is more the humble guy that is really out for the good of the people.
And he had to work his ass off, and obviously Tony did, but like
he does say that Tony is fighting for himself
much and lost so much.
They're two very very different people, and they're both kind of A-type personalities where they both are like they know they're going to be the leaders, and they know they work best when they we'll see in the future they work best
Civil
when they're
War
together.
Is like
yeah, so I mean. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. They definitely struggle to find that common ground.
Cap like hates him right away. That's like something that really threw me off in this movie where I was watching this, and like their first interaction where they like show up and he's like, "Tony," and like there's like immediate animosity there, and I was like, "Why do you hate Tony Stark already?" Like,
well, I think it does have to do with the fact that he knew his dad. I think it does, but not from a I hate your dad. I think it's because he trusted his dad, and his dad is so different
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they both have that Stark cocky personality where like we
Right,
get that
but-
fondue scene in the flame
Yeah,
when he's
yeah.
like, oh,
Very
fondue
true.
later, and then like later they're not. He's trying to hook up with Peggy, but they're actually not. So I think it's he maybe to your point, Nigel. He thinks like a Stark is like he sees Stark as cocky and
Yeah.
arrogant, and like maybe he just carries that bias.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to think. Was Cap before? Did he wake up before like Iron Man 2, or after? After, right?
Well, Cap,
Either way, so Cap has a full background of what Tony Stark and who he is,
And that's what I'm saying right
and
there,
who Iron Man is, and how he became Iron Man. And
he's done the research.
He doesn't. Yeah, he just doesn't like the cockiness. He is trying to propel himself into being this soldier, and Cap even says it to him like,
You're not.
"What are you without this suit?"
Exactly.
And it's like we see it develop, especially in Iron Man 2, because it's a breakthrough for Tony to become Iron Man. And like,
But Tony does say to that counterpoint. Tony does say to Steve Rogers. He says, you're just an experiment in a tube or whatever. He like he says like everything you were given was given or was made in a lab. Like, which I was like, he's got a
But see,
point.
it's of the heart.
But the heart.
But that's
yeah,
the thing.
heart
That's the
and
thing
the
that Steve
mindset.
always holds on to.
Yeah.
Is, no, just like what what was the guy in the movie that died? That was like pointing at Cap's heart in the first Avenger.
Oh, the scientist.
yeah,
that,
the
like, picked
scientist.
him?
I
Yeah,
can't remember
yeah.
his name, but like
Oh yeah.
So but like he like tells him like that's the part that matters.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's not the stuff in the
character?
tube.
Yeah,
I think he was my shortest Avenger.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's his name? Abraham something. Stanley Tucci's guy.
Yeah, it's like he's like that's the part that matters.
He
It's
picks
not
him
the
out
stuff
from
that
the-
Tony is like focusing on. It's not.
I
that
can't wait to
stuff.
talk about Iron Man 3,
Yeah.
by the way. So for me, naturally, I'm very high on him the whole time. I'm going Mark Ruffalo, Bruce Banner, the Hulk. I love the introduction. I love the opening scene with Natasha picking him up in the woods. I think it's very funny. It's kind of what, Edward Norton's scene, in the Incredible Hulk, I think it kind of leaves him off back then, back to like just hiding and staying low. But he shows he has his temper under control. And I love the only thing I don't like logistically about his role in this is in the plane he can't hold his temper. When they get to New York City, he can control it, and that kind of pissed me off because we know he can control it going forward from the Avengers on. But throughout the movie, that was the two things that pissed me off. But the acting was next level. It's much more comforting having Mark Ruffalo behind those reins.
This was his first movie.
First
which
movie.
I forgot about until I was rewatching it.
Yeah, it was his introduction to the Avengers, getting rid of Edward Norton. No offense, Edward, but there was just, I don't know, it was a comforting feeling, I guess, because we're so used to him after seeing all the movies.
Yeah.
Ragnarok and all the Avengers. So for me, I'm very happy that he's in it. I think he was great from top to bottom. I love when he rides up in the motorcycle. I love when he's laying in the crumbled building and the guy's
like your buck ass naked.
Yeah. So for me, definitely Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
How about you guys for Baby Arm's weakest character in this movie?
Just a quick point, Vic. I think Mark Ruffalo, you might appreciate this reference, is sort of like Edward Norton is sort of like a Kyrie Irving. He may be more talented than Mark Ruffalo, but Mark Ruffalo I think is a better fit with this.
Better fit for the
cast.
team,
Similar
absolutely.
to Kemba Walker being a much better fit for the Boston Celtics.
Amen.
So, a little sports talk in there.
Yeah. Nigel, you got a weakest?
Weakest. So I'll be honest. I love Tom Hiddleston, but I'm gonna go with Loki. Honestly,
okay.
Just mainly, and so I've heard a lot of talk of like, and maybe they show it in the Loki show and stuff like that, that he always has a plan, and maybe this was part of the plan was him to lose because he doesn't want to be in the situation he's in necessarily. I've heard that talk and everything. I'm not sure. Personally, he's just such a smart, clever guy, tricky guy. He gets his ass whooped several times, and he shows that he has the ability, like with the Hawkeye mind switch, with I'll always pronounce his name wrong, but the scientist, like when he gets him to change his mind.
Oh, yeah.
Selvig.
Yeah.
But they get he does all this. The thing with him being in the Hulk's chamber where they capture him, he has all this stuff planned out. He has a second plan, he has a third plan, and yet throughout the movie, he just still seems to, even though he is two steps ahead, he still gets duped over by this team that just got thrown together. And yes, Tony's a genius and stuff like that, so he can kind of keep up with it, but like you just get duped a lot, and it's just like, I mean, you go right back to the Hawkeye thing. Like this is a perfect example. That arrow that like he catches, but it blows up because he's not paying attention. That it's beeping. Like it's a little bit like, and maybe back to your point, Kyle, just like, to me, he seemed like a good Avengers villain, but like in the moment when you get down to it, it's like without that army, really, he
doesn't have much.
He really didn't have it under control, which is surprising for someone like Loki, the way they built him up in the Thor movie and stuff like that. I expect him to have a little more control over it.
I agree.
That's a good point. For me, for Baby Arms, I'm gonna go with Thor. I think Chris Hemsworth. I love Chris Hemsworth, and I thought he had a lot more personality in the original Thor. And obviously we'll see later in Ragnarok, which is like I think unanimously one of our favorite movies. Nigel, you're kind of new into the fold here. Would you agree with that? With that, is Ragnarok being kind of a fan favorite?
Absolutely. Like the fact that I have all kinds of, I mean, you guys already discussed Thor, so I guess if I can put my 2 cents in there, I like the first Thor. The second one, I actually don't mind it as much as some people really don't care for it.
World.
Yeah, they didn't really like it as much. I like them, but when Ragnarok came out, oh my god, like that was so like the way that they threw in some more comedy and stuff like that, just got that back to like where I'd always want an MCU film to be. Like that's just, it was so much better than the first two in my opinion, and obviously we'll get to that, but yeah, agreed.
I think back to your point earlier, Nigel, I think the MCU is probably at its best when they're hitting on their comedy levels, because I think and that's where Ragnarok really shines, where like Ragnarok is basically a comedy, but it still has the action, it still has the adventure, it's got all those different elements. But to me, like, we'll go into this a little bit more of the rankings, but to me, this felt like a rough draft for the Avengers, where like I think there were some comedic elements, but I think they were like really still trying to figure out whether they wanted to be like a serious, like an action-oriented film or like a comedic role, and we get different elements like Guardians that's coming up, like that's I think mostly a comedic story there, so like different stories speak to different levels, but
you didn't think he was doing as well this one?
So no, for this one, I didn't think I love Thor, but I didn't think he had. I just thought he didn't have much to do in this movie. Where like
he did feel a little downplayed.
He's very concerned with Loki at the beginning, and he kind of just wants to get Loki and go back home.
He reminds me of Giannis from the Bucks. It's like the first possession of every game, Giannis catches the ball, takes 2 dribbles, and dunks on everybody, and it shows the power, but he doesn't want to do it. And that's kind of like how Thor is to me. Like, Thor is so powerful when he wants to be, and I had the same gripe with the first Thor. He's so powerful when he wants to be, and then he like doesn't turn it on other times. I feel like he could have done way more in the final battle scene for how powerful he is. When he's falling in that thing, it takes him that long to break out of it. Like that, you're like the thing with Thor is he's like too hit and miss, I guess, throughout every movie.
There's a weird scene where he falls on the ground and he's like not worthy for a minute, which I thought was really weird because he goes to reach the hammer and he can't get the hammer, and I was like, oh, so you're not worthy again? We just had Thor 1 where he went through his
that was weird.
But then like 20 minutes later he's worthy again.
It was weird. It was weird.
I agree that the consistency for Thor is a little odd.
That was something that, especially going back and rewatching all these movies, that's something that really stuck out for me. Where I was like, because like he goes to the grass and he goes to find his hammer and he like puts his arm out to go grab it and it doesn't come to him, and I'm like, so you're not worthy now? And it's like, but then he gets worthy again, but we don't ever see that. It's like Thor 1, except Thor 1, the whole point was that he wasn't worthy. Yeah. He was banished and he gets the power back.
Yeah.
So then he comes with his power.
So I think in that scene you're talking about, I don't think that it's not coming to him. I think he reaches for it, but it's in that moment he's just like, because they all just get the crap kicked out of him. I think in that moment he's just like, I don't know. I think
he's hesitating,
I think he's hesitant of it. And that's why when he picks up, he's like, you know what? They need me and I'm ready. Like, I need to get back and...
That could be it. It was a strange scene.
It was a weird scene because it was unnecessary because you just had Thor. You know, you just had that scene, that was the whole plot of that movie. You know?
Yeah, so that's Thor 1.
Yeah.
But that's me. Thor, Chris Hemsworth, I love him in future movies, but I think he's the baby arms for me this week.
Okay. So I actually have 2, and they're kind of even to me. Agent Hill, double baby arms.
Oh, this is a reviewer's assemble first.
Yeah, right. This is history. So Agent Hill for me, I love her. I think she's cute as hell.
It's Robin Shabosky.
I kind of like her throughout the rest. She has, she's great in other movies in the future. I think Winter Soldier, she has a big role in that going forward. This one, I didn't really like her. I felt like she was kind of like too prominent in some scenes, and it kept, I don't know why, it just like overstepping her boundaries as to who she is. And I know because she's a kind of a big name actor that they wanted to make sure she had a
Colby
big role.
Smothers, I think, or Smolders.
Colby Smulders.
Yeah,
Colby Smulders.
so I know they wanted to give Robin a role, but it felt too forced in some scenes, and it was starting to piss me off. And there's times where like physically as an agent, she's like phenomenal, and other times she's like really like floppy, and I'm like, so is she like not a physical agent and she's more a brain agent, or is she kind of in the middle? Like I know she's not Romanoff, but she's also, I don't know. She felt too.
She should be above average.
Yeah, and it just there was times she was and times she wasn't. It kind of pissed me off. Hawkeye, like I don't know what it is, and I actually feel like I have a deeper emotional connection to Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner going forward in other movies. In this one though, like how Natasha just beats his ass and beats him like back to normal. I felt like that was way too easy considering how
That
long
was a weird scene.
Yeah, like it felt way too easy to break him. I thought it was way too easy to turn him at the beginning when Loki first had him. And then I don't know, like I get that's his character, the whole bow and arrow thing, but like he's on the roof just like shooting people like one arrow at a time, and he runs out, and like in my mind before even seeing him run out of arrows, like all right, when's this dude gonna run out of arrows? Like I was already thinking that, and it's not so much the acting. I think it's more of the character related. So I think the acting's fine, but I just don't like how they portrayed the character and how they're using him. I know he actually talks like, I don't know if it's this movie or in the future, he's like, I'm just a guy with a bow and arrows. Like I know he says that at some point in the future.
I think it might be Ultron.
Yeah,
I think that is Ultron.
At some point. So
That's cool, yeah.
not so much the acting from Jeremy Renner's part. I think more of the directing and how they use the character is my gripe with him.
I think we all kind of agree, at least, Nigel, I don't want to speak for you, but like, I think MCU kind of disrespects Jeremy Renner. Like, I think Hawkeye throughout the movie, we were talking about how like he doesn't have like his own solo movie. Like watching these movies again, he gets like a very little role, and he seems like a badass character. Where like you think he would have a bigger role, and I feel like the MCU is always like pushing him down.
So I do agree. I think that they kept him really low on the pecking order for sure for us. But I will disagree and say that. I'd agree more with the Agent Hill one for sure.
Yeah.
The Hawkeye one, not so much for me, just because of the situation he's put in, where I agree. It does seem really easy. One, that Loki captures him so quickly. That part I was just like, that's
Just
like
because the scepter is just like
and not even just the scepter, but just the fact that he's so quickly caught. I'm like, you're supposed to be like one of these top agent kind of things. And it's the same issue I'd have, like, if I have the same issue if Black Widow was in that situation. I'd be like, you're supposed to be, like, the epitome of agent. Like, what?
At least smart your way out of it. Obviously, you didn't physically beat Loki, but you should have smart your way
Right,
out
I
of it.
expect you to get out of it. But he doesn't. So, but I will say, after that, I thought he was a little bit stronger than most people give him credit for, just because, like, you just had your mind controlled. And he goes over, like, when he's in that sick bay with Natasha. Like,
How bad it
was and everything, and how much he had to go through. And he immediately right back into the mix, and he's like, okay, you know what, I'll get over it, let's go,
Yeah,
so,
no, that's fair.
But at the same time, I agree, it is weird, and I will say, I do not like the fact that how easily Black Widow kicks his butt. Like, I agree, I thought that you two were supposed to be, like, maybe not even, but, like, a little closer, but she, like, just...
She's way above him.
Way better than you.
I love the last punch, too, after he's like, Nat, and boom, one more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just, it is surprising. I'm like, I thought you guys were supposed to be, like, closer, but...
So we know no rookie scores. Nigel, you know that. No even numbers. You've seen Barstool's Pizza reviews. We don't do even numbers.
Okay.
Always needs a decimal point in place. So what are you going to rank this 1 to 10?
So I'm going to speak just off of what you guys have reviewed so far and stuff like that, because, like, knowing from the back.
So go with the
forward.
score first, and then you can rank it after.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever you, and like the way I do it, like I put an individual score out of 10, but that doesn't necessarily mean if I put a higher score for a certain movie, that doesn't mean I think a movie is better than another movie. I rank those, at least me personally, I rank those separately. The score, I just basically, score is one thing, ranking is another. So a movie could get a higher individual score and be lower on my rankings.
Gotcha. Okay.
So whatever.
Just your personal opinion for the rankings, stuff like that.
But we all, I don't think we have a set standard. It's just
cool.
Whatever you do.
So when this first came out, I mean, personally, I thought it was ridiculous. It was crazy how they brought this all together, and it just like it stuck out in my mind as like just. And I know you're gonna disagree with that for sure, but like I thought it was just ridiculous. I'll give it. I want to say, honestly, an 8.7.
Well,
probably.
Well, they do.
Yeah. because it's just like it is so good. I mean, it's the first time you really see characters of this magnitude with this much lore and stuff like that, all this backstory, and they did a great job, I thought, of not just because a lot of times you get like one of these jumbled films together and it's like you lose a lot of the backstory, but they don't. They keep a lot of that stuff together. You know, the whole banner scene, like you were saying, when he walks, he's like, I'm always angry, so he's got it under control. All this stuff. That's stuff that a lot of other times they've tried to make movies like this, they leave out. They don't include that, or they forget about it, expecting the audience to not really realize it, and they don't. They remember that, you know? Little stuff like that. They just... So all the little backstories, little intricacies that they keep in there
makes it fun.
I like, yeah, and the comedy. Again, the big thing for me was what separates these movies from a lot of the other, you know, superhero movies in general is just some of the comedy they keep in there where it's not forced. It's just little stuff to keep you, you know, and little, you know, stuff they add in there for people like comic book fans, people that watch this stuff when they were younger like me. So, you know.
So Kyle, you put an 8 in front of your score?
For this one, so going into this movie, I really was like really excited for Avengers. I was like, all right, we watched the origin movies, like everyone's coming together. I remember seeing this in theaters. I actually worked at the movie theater in 2012 when this came out, so like I remember not only seeing it for free, but also like cleaning up and seeing the end credit a million times in the last 20 minutes. Or I mean, definitely working and not watching movies while I was working. For me, rewatching this, I was pretty disappointed, honestly.
So is it an 8 point?
I'm going to give it 7.9.
Oh!
7.9.
I knew it was coming.
I'm going to give this a 7.9.
I honestly, the way you were talking earlier, I thought it was going to be a little lower, I'll be honest.
I found myself kind of bored with a lot of this movie, and I was really kind of surprised at myself for that, rewatching this. I went in with an open mind. I talked about it earlier briefly, but like the Loki scene I thought was weird, or not weird, but kind of weak. I think Loki is just, again, an amazing actor. Tom Hiddleston is great. But as an Avengers level villain, where this is supposed to be a build up of the sixth movie, all of the origin movies, like I just thought it kind of fell short. The scene where they're arguing with the scepter, I thought was kind of weak. I felt they kind of too easily argued. I did love some of the back and forth between like Tony and Cap. Some of the lines there, Nigel, like you said, the humor sticks out. I just thought that some of the humor I think hit really well. Some of the other humor I thought felt kind of flat. But like I think future MCU movies I think really hit that humor. So I think they're still kind of figuring out what kind of series they want to be at this point. So yeah, this is 2012. This is 8 years whatever from Endgame or whenever that came out. So they still have ways to go and they're learning from each movie. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the film. The action scene, the last like 30 minutes is always awesome, where they're all fighting the big thing. But like we talked about, it kind of stood out to me that they don't go after the portal. There's that cool scene with Tony with the nuke, when the nuke is fired, and then Tony rides it up. But like Vic said when we were talking about it off camera, the fact that Tony like falls through the portal again, and when he should have been kind of probably floating in space, is a little unrealistic. But again, this is the MCU, so
also low-key on that point. Why don't you let go of a nuke before you hit the portal?
That momentum.
I know you're like
because he didn't bring it right to the ship.
Right,
he let
like,
go.
I know you're trying to like maybe aim through where it's going, but like at that point,
the momentum has got to be carrying.
Do you really care? Like you know what you're shooting at. Like, So it's just
the missile's not going to go down.
It's a little weird. So
yeah, I agree.
Kind of reminds me of a Cap where we were talking about why is he in the plane? Why is he going to the ice? We talked about this, Nigel, when we were with Garrett. Why does Cap stay in the plane when he goes into the ice? Why doesn't he jump out of the plane? And we think maybe he needs to control it the whole way. Maybe same thing with Tony where he's got to, guide the missile the whole way. But
you bring up that point, and I don't want to get off track, but Tony and Cap have a slightly better mutual respect for each other going forward. And I wonder if that has something to do with it.
After the nuke
because the morality, So Cap did that back in the 40s. Right,
oh, you're saying those might be connected.
Yeah, so mentally for Cap,
it's a sacrifice.
It earned Tony's respect.
It 100% is, and I think it's something that throughout the entire thing, Tony holds on to. That's because at the beginning of this movie, Cap kind of calls Tony out like, "You're not a soldier.
You're always fighting for yourself."
You're fighting for yourself. You would never give yourself up like I already have.
Did.
And I think that's part of getting back to your point of like why he goes after him right away. Like you're a selfish guy. This is who you are. Like I'm not. I'm selfless.
He's never seen Tony sacrifice for the greater good, and until he does that with the nuke, and it's like
fair.
At the end, when they're all dressed up and they're saying bye to each other, there's a nice like handshake and smirk, and it's like you could see those two kind of
And I
mutually.
think, yeah,
now.
exactly. I think that's
Yeah.
exactly the point. Is that they now have something very much coming that the people have no idea. It's like, both of them were willing to die for that world, you know. So for sure.
So for me, looking at, bringing in Mark Ruffalo, developing all the characters a little deeply, introducing them all to each other, a lot of the emotional connection, Nick Fury kind of propelling himself of being in charge of the Avengers Initiative and all that stuff, along with obviously being a lengthy movie. I put this at the top of my list, just above Iron Man and Captain America at 8.6. So it is number one for me so far through 6 movies.
Mm-hmm.
We have Iron Man 3 coming up. For me, it's an 8.6. I don't know why it draws so much, and maybe because there's so much going on, and there's definitely plenty of lapses. I can rip this movie apart. We do a whole nother thing about that. But for me, I think so much going on, bringing so many characters into it. I loved Mark Ruffalo, obviously. It was really entertaining for me, rewatching again. Some of the one-liners are great, but between, the Hulk's one-liners and Tony Stark's and things like that. So for me, it's an 8.6, top of the list through 6 movies. So, Nigel, where are you putting this? I know you haven't done the other 5. Where do you put this in your rankings? Is it top 2, top 3?
I'll probably put it top 3 for sure.
What would be above it?
I'm gonna say Iron Man 1 would be above it. I'm gonna tell you honestly, Iron Man 2 and Captain America: First Avenger definitely kind of tie for me. I like both of them.
So Avengers might be 4?
No. So
So
I guess technically,
top.
actually, you're right. That actually would put it at 4. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
Avengers
I
is
like both of
4th.
them just because they're solid. I like Iron Man 2 more than I'll say most people I've talked to. Most people like.
A lot of people hate that movie. I think we
I
like.
know.
We like it more than
I
most
think
people.
it's
as well.
just
Yeah.
I love how arrogant and smug he is, and I'll be honest. I love one of my top Avengers is Rhodey. I love Rhodey.
Oh, yeah.
So like.
Yeah, it's a good introduction of Don Cheadle, and we loved Mickey Rourke as the bad guy.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did like
Honestly,
very happy with
one of
him.
my
Underrated.
favorite bad guys
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
I wish he had
So
a
for
little
sure.
bit bigger going forward and stuff like that. But he did phenomenal because he's honestly, just to put that out there while I have a second, honestly one of the scariest villains I'll say
Yeah,
by
Yeah.
far. Like
he's
actually
got
has
nothing to lose.
such a
He's
good
genius.
Just like a horror
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
He literally does such a good job. That's the only movie that really kind of in my opinion, taps into the whole like this guy is scary. Like he's so realistic.
Literally.
So.
So Kyle, you had it a 7.9, just below an 8. Where does that put it on your power rankings?
So just because I gave it a lower score doesn't mean I like it less. So for my rankings, so I think for me it's still going to be Cap, First Avenger number 1. It's going to be Iron Man, the original Iron Man number 2, Iron Man 2 at number 3. This one's going to slide in for number 4, similar to Nigel's rankings. The Avengers, that's going to go above Thor for me and above Incredible Hulk, which I'm pretty sure will be at the bottom for the entire saga, but
Literally.
we'll see. I mean, maybe something will top that, but
I might not surprise you. There's some movies I don't like in this.
yeah,
We'll see.
I know Dark World is like a very low point for a lot of people, so we'll see. But I like Thor movies usually more than most people, so I don't think that's gonna. I hate Hulk, so we'll see. But yeah, for me, Cap 1, Iron Man 2, then Avengers at number 4, then Thor, then Incredible Hulk.
I can tell you right now for anything that I come back for, I'll tell you right now the Hulk is at the bottom for me because growing up, I liked the Incredible Hulk TV show and stuff like that. I love the Hulk character and everything, so I hated those movies. I'll
Amen.
be completely honest. So that's just right off the bat. If you ever ask me, that's number like 20 for me.
It's whatever's the lowest. Yeah, I think we agree. The Edward Norton Hulk just isn't good.
No.
It sucks because it's nothing against Edward Norton, but yeah,
He's a great actor. Just
it just didn't feel
Bad directing.
Yeah, not great.
Cool.
yeah.
So that's it for the Avengers.
So that's our review of the Avengers. So thank you for joining us. As always, special guest Nigel filling in for Garrett this week. So please check us out next week. We're doing Iron Man 3. So we'll see how that goes. But please like, comment, subscribe. Please follow, tell your friends about this. We hope you had a good time watching. Again, we're gonna try for a shorter product, but we'll see how it goes. I feel like we went a little long in the tooth on this one.
It's
but
a big movie though, so
it's a big
First
movie, so
Avengers.
maybe take a little bit more. But we're still not gonna hit the hour and 10 for Iron Man 2. I
Something
think.
like that, yeah.
Yeah. But there was a special edition at the end there when we were all shit faced. So maybe go check that out instead.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, until next time. Peace.